The Phoenix Suns are one of the most interesting franchises in all of the NBA. Created as an expansion team in 1968, the team has the 5th highest win percentage out of all the teams in the league and no championships. Even though they've been in the finals 3 times, they've fallen short each one. But that doesn't take away from the legendary players that have graced the franchise over the years. Even though he only played 4 years for the club, Charles Barkley did something no other Suns player had done, and won the MVP award while also leading his team to the NBA Finals. Even though they followed the Bulls in 6 games, Barkley brought real championship hope to the team who hadn't seen it in a while. On the other hand, we have a man who went on to one-up Barkley by winning back-to-back MVPs for the Suns and sparking one of the most iconic play styles in history. Steve Nash was actually drafted to the Suns back in 1996, but was traded 2 years later. Eventually, he would return as a free agent in 2004 and help revive the Suns from their post-Barkley slump. He would pair up with Amari Stoudemire and put together one of the most memorable and iconic years in Suns history, and even though he never got a finals berth, it doesn't take away from how iconic Steve Nash was for the franchise. Now, in the last spot, I have a guy who obviously can't match up to these guys just yet, but he still has a chance to do something that hasn't been done in franchise history. Devin Booker was drafted at 18 years old to the Phoenix Suns with the 13th pick in the 2015 NBA Draft. Nobody could have guessed the kind of player he would develop into. Arguably the best shooting guard in the league, Booker has toiled through some truly terrible seasons with the Suns until teaming up with Chris Paul and leading the Suns to the NBA Finals. Even though they'd also fallen 6 games, Booker put up some unreal stat lines and has continued to do so to this day. Even though he lacks the accolades the others have, he still has a chance to put together a GOAT-level career for the Phoenix Suns. Barkley, Nash, and Booker. 3 guys who have a chance to be named the franchise GOAT. But as we know, it can only be one. So let's find out who is the greatest player in Phoenix Suns franchise history. Yo, what's up everybody? It's your boy 2KJ here, and today this week's episode of Case for Franchise GOAT is going over the Phoenix Suns and which of these 3 players would most likely be crowned the franchise GOAT. And unlike the Blazers episode, 2 of these guys made their mark after becoming Suns later in their careers, so it'll be a much different episode for sure. If you like the content, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and ring that bell. Put what team you want next in the comment section down below. Alright, let's get to it. Charles Barkley is known as one of the best power forwards of all time, and for very good reason. He was an 11-time All-Star, got All-NBA honors 11 times, was on both the 50th and 75th anniversary teams, the Dream Team, and is also one of the few players in NBA history to win the MVP award. If you watched the round mound of rebound play, you knew he was electric on the court. Chuck would break out as one of the best players in the NBA after getting drafted to the Philadelphia 76ers in 1984. He would put in 8 phenomenal years, learning from legendary stars Julius Erving and Moses Malone to put together an incredible start to his career, even putting up insane stat lines as a second-year player, averaging 25 points on 58% shooting and 12.8 rebounds per game in the playoffs as a second-year player. He would become the face of the Sixers franchise after Erving retired and Moses Malone left, and was an All-Star and All-NBA from 1987 until he'd leave the Sixers in 1992. And in that 1992 season, the Sixers having a 35-47 record, looking to miss the playoffs, Barkley would be traded to the Phoenix Suns as the 76ers didn't want to lose him in free agency for nothing. But this is where his legacy grew even more. In his first game as a Phoenix Sun, Barkley would have an unreal stat line of 37 points, 21 rebounds, 12 of which were offensive, and 8 assists in a 111-105 victory over the Clippers. If this wasn't a good omen for the season, I don't know what else to tell you. Teaming up with Sun stars Kevin Johnson and Dan Marley, he would lead the Suns to a then franchise record 62 wins, averaging 25.6 points per game on 52% shooting, and had 12.12 rebounds and 5.1 assists to boot. This year, Barkley would become the first Phoenix Suns player ever to win the MVP award and was also an All-Star and first-team All-NBA. He would lead the Suns back to the NBA Finals this year, but they would unfortunately be defeated in 6 games by the Chicago Bulls. In the series, Barkley would average an unreal 27.3 points per game, 13 rebounds and 5.5 assists, and even had a triple-double in Game 4. His next couple of seasons in Phoenix wouldn't be as successful. His various injuries, including a severe back pain and tore right quadricep tendon, would slow him down for most of the season. However, he still made All-NBA second team and the All-Star team, but didn't make it back to the finals in the 3 remaining seasons for the team. suffering 2 blown leads to the Houston Rockets in back-to-back years. He did, however, get all NBA honors and All-Star nods for all 4 years, and his mark on the Suns today is something you can still see. He was inducted to the Ring of Honor for the team even though he was only there for 4 years. He's also one of the most loved players in franchise history, and you can see people rocking his Suns jersey all over Arizona. In 1996, he was traded to the Rockets to team up with Clyde and Hakeem, try and capture a ring, and even though he retired without one, today we still know Barkley is one of the most legendary players of all time and a Suns legend for sure. Now, Steve Nash's story with the Suns is a little bit different. He was actually drafted to the Suns in the legendary 1996 draft with the 15th overall pick, but due to playing at Santa Clara, he wasn't a widely known hooper and overall was looked on negatively on draft day due to this. His first 2 seasons with the Suns were unimpressive to say the least, only averaging 10.5 minutes a game his first season, but a solid 21 in his second, but was largely underutilized as a bench piece for the team. Due to this, and the Mavericks realizing that they might have a diamond in the rough with Nash, they would make a trade for him in the 1998 season for 3 relatively unimpressive players and a first-round draft pick, which will become very important later. Now, during his time as a Dallas Maverick, Steve Nash would show the NBA just the kind of player he was. His first 2 seasons were good, but his 2000-2001 season would be his breakout. He would go on to average 15.6 points per game and 7.3 assists as the floor general of the Mavs offense, partnering with Hall of Famer Dirk Nowitzki and All-Star Juwan Howard to lead the Mavs back to the playoffs. Even though they'd lose to the Spurs in the second round, they'd build off this with Nash earning his first All-Star game nod and being All-NBA third team, averaging 17.9 points per game and 7.7 assists. He would replicate this feat his next season and would help the Mavs to 3 straight NBA playoff berths, till his free agency in 2004. At the age of 30, owner Mark Cuban didn't want to risk handing out a long-term deal to the 30-year-old Nash and offered him a 4-year deal with about $9 million annually. On the other hand, realizing their mistake for dealing him 6 years ago, the Phoenix Suns would offer him a much bigger 6-year, $63 million contract. Not wanting to leave the Mavs, he returned to Cuban to ask if he would match him, which he wouldn't. And today, it's funny to think that we almost associate Nash with the Phoenix Suns because of this. It's wild to think that due to Cuban's cheap nature, we don't see him as a lifelong Maverick, and instead, he would return to the Phoenix Suns and he would make Cuban pay. Steve Nash joined a Suns team that had only won 29 games last year, but coach Mike D'Antoni knew exactly how to get the most out of his roster with Steve Nash manning his legendary 7 seconds or less offense. He'd team up with Joe Johnson, Amari Stoudemire, and Shawn Marion, who they'd actually acquired due to that first-round pick they got in the original Steve Nash trade back in 1998. The Suns would match their franchise record with 62 wins with an average points per game of 110.4, which if you know was unreal in this era of basketball. Steve Nash would win the MVP this year, proving Cuban's gamble wrong, with averages of 15.5 points per game and 11.5 assists on 50% shooting, and leading the Suns to the Western Conference Finals for the first time in a while. Even though they'd lose to the Spurs in 5 games, the next year Nash would repeat this feat, carrying the Suns through the season with averages of 18.8 points per game, 10.5 assists on 51% shooting, winning his second straight MVP and leading the Suns back to the conference finals that would eventually be defeated by the Dallas Mavericks. The next year, he narrowly missed winning his 3rd straight MVP award, but was joined by teammate Amari Stoudemire to be the first 2 teammates to get All-NBA first team since Shaq and Kobe. His playoff woes would continue, however, as he once again would lose to the Spurs in the conference semifinals, and the next 3-year stretch would be much the same. Nash putting up incredible numbers, but the Suns still failing to get it done in the playoffs. He'd rack up more accolades and All-Star appearances till his last season with the Suns in 2012, in which he and the Suns would decide to go different directions as he would be traded to the Los Angeles Lakers. This trade, however, is really important because it had huge ramifications in what would happen next, as even though they'd somewhat stay afloat, a 39-41 Suns team would get the 13th overall pick in the 2015 draft, and in that draft, they would pick Devin Booker. Much like Steve Nash, Devin Booker was also drafted to the Phoenix Suns, the 13th overall pick in the 2015 NBA draft, making his debut only 2 days before his 19th birthday. Booker would go on to have a stellar rookie campaign in which he'd become the 3rd youngest player in NBA history at 19 years and 81 days to record a 30-point game, behind Kevin Durant and LeBron James. He'd also get 3rd in the 3-point contest that year behind both Splash Bros, finished his rookie season as the 4th youngest player to reach 1,000 career points and getting all rookie first team honors. A lot of people didn't even realize what Booker was until now in the future, and it's honestly funny to see how he fell to the Suns at 13th just because of how stacked his college team was. His next 2 seasons, he would prove this by going from 13.8 points per game in his rookie season to 22.1 points in his sophomore season, then raising it again to 24.9 points per game in his junior season. Even crazier, in his sophomore season, he would go on to become the youngest player to score 70 points in a game ever, and join one of 6 players at the time to go for that total. It was becoming obvious that Booker was something special, but it would really take a long time for him to get the recognition he deserved due to playing on some pretty bad Suns rosters over his first couple of years. He was blossoming as a prolific scorer in the league, even becoming the 3rd youngest player to reach 4,000 points, becoming the youngest player in NBA history with back-to-back 50-point games, and the only player in franchise history with back-to-back 50 games. He would also earn his 5-year, $158 million max extension with the Suns in 2019. In 2020, he would finally start to get recognition on a national stage. He would earn his first All-Star Game appearance this year, having over 30 points in 7 straight games, being the only player since the 1984 season to have 30-plus points and 6-plus assists with 47% shooting in 6 games. He would become the 4th fastest player to 7,000 career points, and he would lead the legendary Bubble Suns to a perfect 8-0 record, earning an all-seeding games team nod and averaging 31 points per game in the contest. This would be another good omen, as the next year, Booker would finally show everyone that he was not just an empty stat merchant, because they would acquire Chris Paul, and finally, for the first time in a very long time, they would go back to the NBA Finals. Devin Booker would finally make the playoffs for the first time in his career and was an All-Star again for the 2nd straight year. He would take the Suns to the finals for the 3rd time in history and would average 25.6 points per game, 4.3 assists, and 4.2 rebounds in the regular season, and put up some unreal playoff performances, including back-to-back 40 pieces in the NBA Finals. However, despite having a 2-0 lead, they couldn't escape the classic Arizona choking curse and would lose 4-2 to the Milwaukee Bucks. This next year, Booker would earn his 3rd straight NBA All-Star Game appearance and finally earned his first All-NBA first-team nod, after leading the Suns to a franchise record 64 wins and becoming the 4th youngest player to reach 11,000 points. Leading to go back to the finals, he was injured in the 2nd game of the Suns' first-round series, then suffered one of the funniest Game 7 meltdowns of all time against the Mavs in the 2nd round. Now, his 2023 season would see him reach a new career high, scoring with 27.8 points per game, with 4.5 rebounds and 5.5 assists as well. Dealing with various injuries this year, Suns wouldn't perform as well, but the acquisition of Kevin Durant at the deadline helped make the Suns one of the deadliest teams in the playoffs. And with KD drawing most of the attention, Booker would have one of the most unreal scoring runs in the playoffs to date, having multiple 40-point games and leading the Suns to be the only team that would take more than one game off the Denver Nuggets in their NBA championship run. Now, this upcoming season will be even more interesting, as with the acquisition of Bradley Beal, we might be seeing Point Book this year. But time will tell if he could lead the Suns to the promised land and do what no man has ever done. But now that we've gone through our players, I want to make a point of why I didn't add Kevin Johnson, who also is a Suns legend and is an honorable mention on this list. Now, I feel like the lack of MVPs doesn't really stack up well against Nash or Barkley. In the case of Booker, he's about 100 points away from passing him on the all-time Suns scoring list and has played less seasons than him, and in my opinion is a much better player than him. Not to say that Kevin Johnson isn't good, but I feel like he just wouldn't stack up as well against Booker, which means I can't really add him on this list. He's an honorable mention and a Suns legend, however, but without further ado, let's compare these guys' stats and see how they match up together and figure out who is the franchise GOAT. Taking a first glance here, Steve Nash has the most seasons played out of 3 with 10, with Booker likely to eclipse that in the next couple of years, and Barkley only playing 4 years in a Suns uniform. Booker has the most points scored out of the bunch in only 8 seasons, with 12,747 points, and likely to become the all-time leading scorer in a couple of years. Nash has the lead on MVPs, with back-to-back wins in 05 and 06, with Barkley having his only MVP in 93. Now, Booker has a shot to win MVP, but with the way the league's upper echelon is performing, it might be a long shot. Barkley and Booker both have one finals appearance each, both losing in 6 games, and if the Suns had gotten past the Spurs in 2007, there's a very likely chance they would have beaten the Cavs in the NBA Finals, but unfortunately that's a what if for another episode. Nash comes in first with the most VORP at a solid 33.1, towering over both Booker and Barkley. But looking at these three, and honestly before I even made the video, I already had a feeling that the answer would be Steve Nash. As an Arizona native growing up in the 2000s, Steve Nash was always the face of the franchise. Barkley brought hope to the team and the organization for the first time in a while, but he only stayed around for 4 years. Nash was around for significantly longer, won back-to-back MVPs, and while he never made it to the finals, the Suns were perennial contenders with Nash for a while. Now, in saying that, there's a very specific reason why I added Devin Booker to this list. Not only will he very likely have the franchise record for points at the end of his career, Booker has a chance to do something that none of these other players managed to achieve, and that's win a championship. Because if Booker does that, he will 100% be on the track to become the franchise GOAT, because they haven't won a championship. They've gotten close, but Arizona is notoriously a state that doesn't have the best luck with championships, and if Booker leads them to the promised land, he might just be that guy. But what do you guys think about these 4 players, and who should be crowned the franchise GOAT? Yes, I am talking about Kevin Johnson as the 4th one, just in case you had him. He is a Suns legend, definitely deserves the respect. But for now, my vote is on Nash, but I think Booker could do it by the end of his career. But put what you think in the comment section down below. Thank you guys for watching this week's episode of The Case for Franchise GOAT. If you want your team to be next, put it in the comments for next week's vote, and thank you all for watching. I'll catch y'all in the next one. I'll see y'all later. Peace.